we need the support of each other. Because we brought on to ourselves that I'm outside. But I'm not outside. I'm just one of a group of people, like so many, like some people have brown hair and some people have enjoyment of doing that and this. And you just need to get together social to learn and enjoy. And I've been talking so much that I'm going to bunch it over to Anne-Sophie is doing fantastic.
Nous nous sommes créés, nous sommes une association en France où nous regroupons depuis 16 ans 50 associations en France.
We are an association.
Can everybody hear Anne-Sophie, or should we ask her to come to the microphone?
Microphone.
Would you both come to the microphone? That would be very good.
I'm sorry, I don't speak English. This is my super interprète. Notre histoire de patient a commencé par une histoire personnelle.
So it all started with a personal history, a personal experience.
Et d'une histoire personnelle, je me suis dit qu'il fallait absolument aider les gens.
And from a personal history, that it was necessary to aid people living with the condition.
Comme la plupart des associations qui se sont créées partout dans le monde.
Like most of the associations around the world.
Depuis 16 ans, voire 17 ans, je fais du bénévolat en France.
Since 16 or 17 years ago, she started working as a volunteer.
Et c'est parti de mon lit d'hôpital sur ma première chirurgie bariatrique.
Right after her bariatric surgery from her hospital bed.
En travaillant en presse médicale, je me suis rendu compte qu'on donnait beaucoup d'informations aux médecins et absolument aucune pour les patients.
That a lot of the information was passed on to the doctors, but not to the patients.
Donc, au saut du lit, j'ai décidé effectivement de partir sur le combat de donner de l'information pour les patients.
Okay, as soon as she was out of bed, it was the mission to pass on the information to the patients.
On a commencé par répertorier toutes les associations qui existaient en France et ayant le même objectif, d'aider les patients et de donner une information médicale vulgarisée.
First goal was to gather all the associations who had the same goal of giving the information to the patients by simplifying the medical language as possible.
Nous avons rencontré l'État français, nous avons rencontré les sociétés savantes et les journalistes pour savoir comment on pouvait travailler ensemble.
So they've met with the journalists, the government associations to have a unified policy of approaching the problem.
Comment donner une information vulgarisée, non stigmatisante et positive pour les patients.
How to give a non-stigmatizing yet simplified language for use of the patients.
Pour qu'ils puissent commencer à devenir acteurs de son état de santé et qu'importe la pathologie.
So they can handle their own situation without being victims of the stigmatization.
L'État nous a d'abord regardé un petit peu comme ça et s'est rendu compte qu'on était sérieux et déterminés.
And realized that we were serious and they meant business.
Ayant fait 18 ans de presse médicale, j'ai actionné les médias pour travailler dans notre intérêt.
After 18 years of proactive work, the media is now much more helpful and somewhat obedient.
Et après avoir fait une énorme conférence de presse sur laquelle nous avons fait tous les journaux télévisés, l'État a sonné sur mon téléphone en me disant « Maintenant que vous avez fait le bazar, on va devoir travailler ensemble ».
And finally the government called saying, now that you've created a big fuss, we're going to have to work with you.
Donc à coup de détermination, on y arrive.
Yes.
Aujourd'hui, si je fais le bilan de ces 16 années de bénévolat, nous sommes arrivés à 50 associations en France et dans les îles françaises et dom-tom.
The pro bono work has led to a creation of more than 50 associations working in France and the territories.
En sachant que nous ne prenons pas toutes les associations parce que nous avons une charte de rigueur de travail.
Noting that not all the associations are committed to being included because of the strict regulations that they require.
Ça fait 16 ans que nous travaillons avec la HAS, la Haute Autorité de Santé, sur 9 recommandations de bonnes pratiques en médical et en chirurgical.
It's been 16 years that they have worked on a set of 9 required regulations from the medical associations who work on the topic.
2 recommandations sur la PHP, les hôpitaux de Paris, sur la nutrition et le suivi de la femme enceinte obèse, opérée ou non.
2 recommendations in the hospitals working in the Paris region regarding the health of the pregnant mother, the obese pregnant mother.
Nous avons fait 2 commissions présidentielles, le plan obésité sous Nicolas Sarkozy et les États généraux de l'alimentation avec Emmanuel Macron.
With Sarkozy and President Macron, there has been 2 meetings regarding the issue.
Nous sommes dans différentes instances au ministère de la Santé, la Direction générale de la Santé, la Direction générale de l'Organisation des soins.
They are involved on many levels with the Ministry of Health, the Directorate General of Health,
Direction générale de l'Organisation des soins.
and the official committee for the organization of healthcare.
Le plan national nutrition santé, le plan obésité.
The plan,
Plan national nutrition santé.
the national plan for health nutrition.
Et le plan obésité. Nous travaillons aussi avec les instances, les ARS, les agences régionales de santé, qui sont des mini-ministères de santé dans les régions.
So the county level organizations, the healthcare provider organizations, if you will.
Je co-préside le club prévention santé à l'Assemblée nationale afin de discuter avec les députés européens sur la prévention.
And the committee to deal with the European representatives deal with the health issues.
Nous faisons partie également du comité de santé du CSA, qui est l'organisme de toute la régularisation télévisuelle et radio.
And the television and the radio organization committee that work on the law.
Sur comment passer les bons messages et surtout interdire les messages stigmatisants.
And how to stop stigmatization and favor proactive messages.
Nous travaillons également avec les DU de chirurgie bariatrique et de nutrition pédiatrique.
And bariatric and pediatric healthcare providers.
Et à la demande de certaines facs de médecine, nous intervenons sur les 4e, 5e et 6e années de médecine, comme à la Pitié-Salpêtrière à Paris.
And interventions on the medical school levels in the 4th, 5th and 6th year of medical specialization.
Nous travaillons avec 3 sociétés savantes, la chirurgie viscérale bariatrique, la nutrition sur l'obésité et l'anesthésie sur l'obésité.
Both work with anesthesia in surgery, the bariatric surgery and the nutrition intervention.
Ainsi que l'Académie de médecine et l'Académie de chirurgie en France.
And the Academy of Medicine and Surgery in France.
Nous avons l'honneur de travailler avec le ASO et au Patient Concile.
And of course the ASO.
Et depuis janvier, nous faisons partie d'une instance interministérielle sur 4 ministères pour cadrer l'alimentation de la population en France.
And with an interdisciplinary committee between 4 ministries in France to work on the application of the recommendations in France.
L'obésité est bel et bien une maladie chronique sur laquelle il faut que nous travaillions tous ensemble.
It is a chronic condition that we all must cooperate on working.
Et rien ne pourra se faire si on n'est pas ensemble. Merci.
And nothing will happen if we're not together.
Special thanks to the impromptu
So earlier we, well actually all morning we've heard from various speakers about obviously obesity and the stigma, not only the stigma but on a policy level, governmental level, you know, how we face it every day, how hard these people are actually working to make a difference. And I'm pretty much here as the kind of the human body. So I'm here to actually just really reinforce it to you that although we talk about stigma and weight bias, we talk about building support networks, and that's what this session is about, building networks of support. the only thing I can actually say to you as a patient, not as, you know, the secretary for the Patients Council, or, you know, as a mother of 3 kids, or I'm also a DJ and I'm an author as well, you know, I'm all of these wonderful things. But the only thing I can say to you as me, Vicky, who has obesity, is that the support networks tend to start with you, with every single person. To me, it's almost like a responsibility for every person to take on board that it is, we say obesity is a complex disease. And we've heard Aria speaking and showing the spaghetti pretty much junction that blows my mind every time I look at it, and seeing just how complex on a massive scale it is. Can you imagine what that is actually like for a person with obesity? Because we're living that. We actually live that every day. We are constantly, unfortunately, internalizing a lot of the stigma, because a lot of the times I find people are looking at me going, I'm thinking, they're going, oh my God, she is so fat. You know, and then somebody will say, oh, I love your hair, and I'm like, I got it so wrong. We internalize an awful lot of the stigma, unfortunately, but that does not mean that it does not exist. So when we talk about support networks and building support networks, it is so important that it starts with every single person in the room. There's about 50 people in the room here, I counted. There was more before I got up. They ran. I'm joking. But it does start with every single person. So I would put it all to you, to challenge you all, to take that as a personal responsibility, to build your own support network, to have the conversation with your partner, who may have a sister or a brother who's overweight, to have that conversation with somebody in work. Perhaps you deal in HR. It would be absolutely wonderful to have that conversation with somebody and say, do you know what, actually, there's probably a reason that person doesn't sit in the chair there, because they can't fit, because it has arms on it. You know, there's probably a reason that that person, you know, is late in the mornings because they have to climb 3 flights, and those stairs seem like they're going on forever. They're a mountain. So it's taking the time to just consider what it is like for each person with obesity. And I would hope that you would actually take that away from today, on top of what all these wonderful speakers have said. Thank you.
A couple observations. One I mentioned earlier is that bias and stigma is different for every individual, right? So just like obesity is different for every individual, what's considered bias or stigmatizing is different. It makes it a challenge. The other thing that we haven't talked a lot about, and it's something we've had to deal with as an organization. In fact, we put forward a respect pledge among our members to make sure they respect each other, because we actually find that within our membership, our members were stigmatizing each other based on their treatment option or lack of a treatment option or something along those lines. And so, you know, maybe you did wonderful on Weight Watchers, but you don't need to say, you know, someone else shouldn't have had surgery or tried a medication, or vice versa. Maybe Weight Watchers wasn't the right thing for you, and you found surgery, and that's what changed your life. But doesn't mean that, you know, we need to stop speaking negatively about other therapies as well. So I think the one thing we've spent a lot of time and effort on is actually starting at home, right? Starting with our own membership and saying, hey, you know, we need to stop stigmatizing each other first before we can then ask the community to stop stigmatizing us as well. And it's not always been easy, but it is a slow and steady progress. And I think as you saw from the data I showed in the slides up there, it's coming, right? It's taking longer than we like, but it's coming along. So thank you.
I don't give up, huh? Sorry. The one thing that we haven't said very much about is working together with other groups that has a disability or a problem, health problem. There is so much already done in the various different groups that we can just take over and do in our own groups. But this fear of, I don't want to be in the same group as somebody else, makes it that we lose a lot of power. And we lose a lot of understanding that there is groups who are working and trying to establish good connections with the healthcare and various different other ways. And we are actually welcome if we can ask or can tell and formulate what our things are, because they're the same. let us go on to the next one while it...
Go on, another 2 minutes, is that okay?
Sure. We have... And the other one.
Okay, fine.
Oh, okay. We've been working a lot of trying to get a lot of the things, material here that we're working on. One of the things that Dominic was saying, well, gee, you know, I meet a lot of general practitioners and they don't know anything about stigma. They don't know anything really about weight problems. And we need to have something that is small enough that they can put in their pockets while because they're always so busy. But maybe if they're on a station in work, that they can do that. You know, walking between or taking the train from some place to other. So we've created a book. It's weight stigma in healthcare. And it takes a lot of our own things that we ourselves have said here. So we have it and we can share it and we can use it for all of us. And it's distributed right now.
I don't know if there are enough copies for everybody, but if you don't get one and you want one, please say so afterwards. We can make a list. Yeah?
They're available at the patient counsel's desk in the front.
Oh, very good.
We have also made an extended one that takes in a lot more of the social issues and social being what's happening. And that is a discussion called discussion material, and it's going to be called a booklet. A leaflet, that's that one, and the booklet. Because we need to have some way of communicating what is this thing. Well, it's a discussion material on stigma and user collaboration. We have it out on the net. You can take it down there. We are going to make a printed version too. We printed up 30 issues here to share with you today. And if you want it, it's only 30, so it's secret that'll last everybody.
Well, I think the panel should certainly have clarity.
Yes. Information material is important because you can't take in something that is so against tradition in one day or in 1 hour. You have to have something that you can ponder on and read a couple of times and discuss and share with other people. So we hope you can use this and have fun with it.
I just want to stick a word in there that this second version of the regular size is at exactly as it says, this draft is not finished. So just we have both would like to have both additions and improvements to the material.
Okay, thank you. So now we're really into solutions, which is good. And obviously exchanging written material. Christina, would you mind sitting over here? Sorry, thank you. So we are really into the solutions end. And I'd like to invite anybody in the room here to comment on or to pose questions to this eminent panel that we have here in front of us. Because we are formulating the need and opportunity for specific changes. We've been going into a lot of that, and we are moving into how can we bring about these changes on a larger scale. So all of your comments, all of your wisdom will be much appreciated. And also, of course, you're free to comment on each other's contributions. So, yes, please.
Hi.
Sorry. Would you like to identify yourself?
My name is Katrina Monard. I'm from Switzerland. I'm a dietitian and I'm also a researcher. So I'm wondering thank you first of all for your wonderful presentations. Do you have maybe like 2 or 3 things that you would recommend to a dietitian? Maybe how can we better support and improve the situation in terms of weight bias and stigma for our patients? And then in terms of researchers, what is it that we can do? Again, 2 or 3 things maybe that you might
May I just check, did everybody hear that? Yes, you did. Maybe you take your comment at the same time? Yeah.
It's a very different question.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So in terms of resources for dietitians, I think in the US, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics actually, I just spoke at their annual meeting and they actually did a full session on weight bias where they included, very similar to what we saw today, where you had Dr. Scott Gahan kind of do the part that Arya Sharma did, and then I talked about policy solutions, and we included a patient advocate as well talking about that. So there, some of that education exists, and to me, really, it is about that language choice, looking at those tools that are already talked about here as well. And then when it comes to research, I think for me the key thing is, okay, how are we translating kind of these new skills we're teaching folks and actually seeing how they're taking shape in the community? And I think that's really what is missing. So I have general data that tells me, okay, dietitians' bias rates are equal, if not slightly higher than the general public. But okay, now that we've implemented some of this education, how is that translating into change practice? And I think some of that type of practical research is missing right now that I think I'd like to see, as we can see, you know, even with the competencies project that I described in my slides, you know, those are great, but we have to see, okay, we produce a wonderful document and it got put on a shelf that has all this information in it. How is it being translated into practice? And I think that's, what we're missing right now is some of that practical data. It'd be a great area for research.
Very good. Thank you.
I actually just want to add something there. One of the things that we speak an awful lot about as patients, and going through many different groups in many different countries, and it doesn't change no matter where you go, is that a patient with obesity wants to feel accepted. They really want to feel accepted. And the relationship with somebody like yourself as a dietitian or a healthcare provider is so important, because if that acceptance isn't there, that relationship is not going to exist. So as Joe was saying, you know, when it comes down to language, it comes down to the environment, but it also comes down to, and it's a big challenge to an awful lot of healthcare providers to really accept the patient for who they are and just be very, very open and honest with them. A patient will, it's like anything in human contact, they will understand that. They will completely understand that you understand that they're going through a really difficult time with their disease. So I think that's really, really important that, you know, the people around you that you work with realize that the acceptance and that relationship is key to actually getting better work with them.
Si je peux compléter tout ce qui a été dit, qui était très bien.
To complete what was already said, was already very good.
Donner des objectifs atteignables à vos patients.
To give attainable objectives, realistic goals.
Pour surtout ne pas abîmer l'estime d'eux-mêmes qui est déjà très abîmée.
Not to ruin the low self-esteem, the self-esteem which is already harmed.
Et cela doit passer par une photographie de ce qu'ils ont déjà en termes de comportement et d'y mettre du plaisir.
Which goes through showing them their behavior, their actual behavior, and showing it in a positive light.
Et essayer de voir si éventuellement par l'alimentation on ne met pas un pansement sur des douleurs psychiques.
And if not, if they're not using food as a way to heal other pains.
The one thing we haven't talked about today really is children. What does children need? I know that in Sweden, one of our eminent women have managed to do computer, it's called something nice.
A database?
What?
Is it a database?
No, it's called a platform or something like that. Where you can go on, what? A platform. Where you can go in and find a lot of data about children. Because like a child, I mean, they're connecting a lot of kids to camp. And it takes 2 or 3 days before the kids are trusting to be just children and not fat children. So we need to focus on some of that thing and learn, because we learn ourselves when we do it, and can really do a good job. Computer spread knowledge. Have it there on a base. See to it that it goes out information about it to the hospitals, to teachers to the schools everywhere. Okay.
May I ask, just make one comment, then I'll ask, then I'll let Doug ask his question. But I just would say on the children aspect of it, so in the U.S. we have this big push now against childhood bullying, right? And this is whether it's for gender or religion or whatever it may be, appearance. But our challenge is that although this is now normal, right? Schools are educating about bullying. They leave out the original form of bullying, which is weight-based bullying that happens on playgrounds. And it's only in very forward-thinking school districts that we actually see the schools mentioning weight, even though weight-based bullying has caused more suicides than all the other forms of bullying combined. And it's not mentioned. So again, it just proves to your point about how ingrained in our culture this idea that, again, people with obesity are bad as well as obesity being bad. And so it's another opportunity for activism, in my opinion. A lot of our members go and talk before school boards to actually try to get them to change their policies at the local level, to try to say, hey, anti-bullying programs are good. We need these programs. Add weight-based bullying to that list of topics that should be talked about. So, sorry.
We also need to do something for the poor children who are already done harassed by it.
No.
Hello, my name is Douglas Ordonez, and I'm the Novo Nordisk. My question to you is actually about encouraging further future advocates, especially with obesity. There's so much internalized stigma. How do we get them to get beyond that, to find their voice, and to become advocates for their own health care?
So I'll start, and we're working on this program, and several of the people in the room here are involved with this, but we actually are releasing a program in the coming months called The Weight of the World, which is actually a collection of videos of people from around the world who are going to be sharing their lived experience with obesity. And really the thought process is those of us who Vicki was part of this with me, we were part of a panel where we all were asked to go really deep into our personal history with obesity. And we had all assumed we were alone and we were the only one who ever felt that way until we all sat and worked with each other on this panel. And then we realized, the 6 of us who did it are now best of friends because of this. We realized, hey, we were not alone. I wasn't the only one who felt that way. I'm not the only one who experienced that. And of course, we can't gather everyone in the world who has obesity together in one room to have those conversations, but can we challenge people to share those stories via video to be able to do that? And that's what the program is. It'll be coming out. We'll unveil it at OEC's annual meeting coming up here in July, and then it'll spread to our partners around the world, because we actually built the platform in the U.S. that our friends around the world can use it as well. And I think it's a small way to get people to share their stories and just say, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who deals with this. I'm not, and maybe it's a little bit to try to stop beating themselves up, in internalizing that stigma that so many people face.
Doug, I love that question because we get asked it all the time, and effectively, I'm sure you will confirm this, we want an army of patient advocates that we can have at every conference, standing in front of rooms full of people, in front of TV screens, media, everything, so that they can stand up for the millions of people who cannot stand up for themselves. So it is vitally important, and one thing I've learned myself from becoming a patient advocate, and it has taken years to get the strength and the courage in yourself, and despite all the TV work and radio work and stuff like that I do, this work is so very different, is that it has to be, you have to feel safe. You have to feel that you are in a safe, respected environment. And that is why it's imperative that, when we're at ECO, that we speak about stigma, and we know that walking around, people have heard it bantered back and forth, and that people will maybe take it into consideration and won't stigmatize myself or any of the other patient council members. It's creating that safe place for people to build up that strength and empowerment within themselves. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It is really, really difficult thing to do. But it's proof of the patient council was established in Sofia, Bulgaria 5 years ago. And it's proof of putting these people together and working together. And before you know, 5 years later, you've got these people who are standing up from different countries. It's like Joe said, it's about the Weight of the World project when we got together in Tampa, Florida last year. And even when we were in Copenhagen before that, and we're standing on a stage in front of, probably about 100 people or something in a room maybe, and you're telling your deepest and darkest secrets, and you're telling the worst of what it's like to live with obesity. And that is a very, very hard thing to do for, I think, anybody. You know, if I look around the room, I could say to any one of you, you know, is there something that you're massively, you know, ashamed about or embarrassed about in yourself? Is there something that, you know, you wouldn't like anyone else to know? Well, I didn't want anyone to know that when I was getting up in the mornings and I was, you know, heading for, 400 pounds in weight, that I had to take the door frame off the shower to fit into the shower, that I had to lift up folds of skin, and I had to treat ulcers that I had and infections I had, that I was so ashamed to look in the mirror when I was naked that I didn't let anybody see me naked. It takes an awful lot of courage to do that, and I doubt very many people who carry weight or have a condition such as obesity can get that in themselves without the safe, respected environment they're in. So it really is about building networks and support and respect, I think.
En France, depuis 2 ans, on travaille sur la valeur en santé.
In France, since 2 years, we've been working on the value of healthcare.
Et la semaine dernière, j'ai fait une présentation au Conseil économique et social
At the Economic and Social Council, there was a presentation
sur le fait que le patient doit, et c'est un devoir, avoir les outils vulgarisés de ce qu'il peut faire en fonction de sa pathologie.
the patient needs to have the language, a simplified language to use on how to explain what is happening to him.
Ça passe par une information qui va être labellisée, cadrée par l'État et les sociétés savantes ainsi que les associations de patients.
Which is an activity that needs to be officialized by the state and the associations working on it.
Mais cela demande également une implication totale du corps médical,
But also a total active participation of the medical body.
parce que nous travaillons à arrêter de faire du paiement à l'acte, mais du paiement à la valeur.
To stop making a value judgment on that.
La valeur.
To stop making a value judgment and appreciating the work of what it is.
Et obligé à faire un travail d'équipe entre l'information du patient, le patient et le corps médical.
And work as a team between the medical with the medical providers and the patient using the comprehensive language.
C'est un travail qui est en cours et qui sortira d'ici 2 ans maximum en France.
And in 2 years it will be ready and official.
So,
I'd like to add something.
yes, please.
Two things. The one is that this leaflet material, the one which is the finished version, I don't think we really quite identified one of the authors, Dominic Durer. Is Dominic here somewhere? Oh, she was. Oh well, I thought she should be named a little more specifically. Otherwise, it's been Christina Fleet was beyond the project yet. She may not, and I've been involved with it myself. The other thing I wanted to say is because you got, I'd like to add something to what I said. Because it's named in the draft material which we have distributed, and so some of you will be reading it. There we've written about something which we call social recovery, and I'd like to explain that because it's not an established concept, it's a suggestion. The thought behind it is that we've been hearing about how obesity is a chronic disease. That means it's something you're going to be living with. And that can feel pretty hopeless when the message otherwise has been, as Christina was saying, don't believe that you're going to, get rid of all those extra pounds and they're going to have a normal life after that. Partly because the social problems are still there, the identity is still there, and because it's still a chronic disease, so you're going to be living with it. That can feel very hopeless. And then it occurred to Christina and me that it might be helpful to borrow a concept that is used in some other areas, the concept of recovery as not a medical concept, medical recovery, but in a social meaning, is used in among mental health patients and in research on mental health, and it's sometimes also in the alcohol and drug abuse field. And it might be helpful to have If not that concept, then some other concept that meets the same type of need, because it's still a matter of living a life. You know, if you're paraplegic and you're sitting in a wheelchair, you can't get healthy in the sense that you can walk, but you can still live a life. And mental health patients have learned that they maybe never will get rid of all of the symptoms, but they can still have a good life. And that's the kind of message that we're trying to get at by suggesting that concept. And we'd love to have some feedback about what you think about whether this is a useful concept, or maybe have some other suggestions for what one could say.
So, any comments or questions? Yes, please. I'm sorry that you need to speak so everybody can hear you. Would you be kind enough to stand up and...
Hi, everybody.
Everybody.
I'm from Portugal. I'm an anthropologist, and my question is about how can we expect that the general public not stigmatize people with obesity when physicians are the first to do so. And I will give you an example. A friend of mine went to the doctor to complain about back pain, and the doctor answered her, "Of course you have back pain. You are fat as a cow." And that is very usual, at least in Portugal, probably everywhere else. So, what can we do first to educate our physicians?
Yeah, so we've undertaken a lot of efforts in the U.S. to educate healthcare providers, and you have to start at home, or you have to start with who is delivering these messages. But I don't think you do one in absence of the other. I think we can correct some of the behaviors by informing the public that they shouldn't accept a comment like that. Like, I mean, she wouldn't mind me sharing the story. I have a sister-in-law who was told by her healthcare provider that, you know, she shouldn't gain so much weight to be fat as a cow during her pregnancy, right? Not realizing that during her previous pregnancy, she had gained 100 pounds, but she had lost that weight kind of thing. But she knew that's not a good healthcare provider. You make those kind of comments to me. She said, "Thank you very much." She turned around, walked out, and found another healthcare provider, right? And moved forward to that. But that's because she had received education in the public light around that as well. So I agree. You start at home with your professional societies. I would urge them all to add, again, in their training, some education about bias, and then the proper use of language. Because I think, again, that situation was probably intentional. I think there are other providers who are doing it much more subtly in their messaging around that. One thing I always remember is when I used to go to my primary care provider, the scale was in the hallway. And so I had to be weighed in front of where other people could see me being weighed. And it was very uncomfortable for me. I don't think they understood that that was uncomfortable for me. That was just practical as the first place to put the scale instead of putting it somewhere private where I would have felt more comfortable in the healthcare environment. So there's lots of education.
Actually, another thing to add, which I think is a remarkable project that was undertaken within the Patient Council, education and training. And Dominique, I know, isn't here, but I think her husband Yves is here. He is, I think. But just to say that one of the things that Dominique came up with, and we haven't seen the other side of it yet, the finished product, but it was a booklet to inform healthcare professionals how to actually engage with your patient, how to have the conversation, how to open the conversation. And like we have all been there. My own son, who was autistic and 11 years old, went to the doctor and with an earache. And on the way out, the doctor obviously said, "Look," he said, "he just needs a few drops." And we're walking out the door, and he tapped him on the tummy, and then he said, "Lose that, or it will kill you." Yeah. So, you know, we see it all the time. We see it constantly. But it's great that from Dominique, who is not only a physician and has done remarkable work and an awful lot of research, is now putting this out on a European level, in the hope that healthcare professionals will actually listen to, and not only, I suppose, the thing about it is not use their own kind of ideas of what obesity is, but be open to listening to what obesity is from a patient, how the patient actually is feeling and what they're struggling with, and addressing that rather than what they think obesity is. Because in fairness, most of them haven't had a training in obesity. I know in Ireland, over the course of doctors, training and everything else, 6 hours is dedicated to obesity. 6 hours in all those years. So, so yeah.
So,
this is the one.
I would like to just say here, we have one more EU presentation to make. And before that, if we like to call that a final presentation. We have time for 1 or 2 more questions if the panel promises to express themselves very, very briefly. So, yeah, so if we just have no pressure at all. If we just have 1 or 2 very other quick responses to that previous question, and then we will take a couple more questions here with snappy responses. Yes? Okay.
Non, je voulais juste rajouter qu'on représente physiquement ce que la société ne veut pas être, d'où ce rejet violent.
We represent physically what the society refuses to see or refuses to be. This is why we are rejected so violently.
Et tant qu'on n'aura pas une compréhension et un peu d'empathie de ce qu'est l'autre, on n'avancera pas. Il faut sortir de la superficialité. L'enveloppe corporelle ne représente pas ce que vous êtes là ou ce que vous êtes ici.
And as long as we haven't gotten rid of the superficial talk, the superficial understanding, the problem will not be able to get rid of.
Il faut faire la prévention.
So it's prevention.
Okay, we have 2 more questions here. 1 here and 1 there. We start here, yes? Would you like to stand up?
Yes, Maria Calafaras, I'm a GP and work in Sweden and obesity treatment. I have a question. I'm actually in a position where we try to educate primary healthcare workers, all the different professions, at least a few times a year. What would an ideal education or workshop on stigma look like that I, as a simple GP and a dietitian and a physiotherapist, that I have, that it's like we 3.
Yes.
How would it look like? I mean, practically, how can I? Yeah.
Je l'ai fait en France il y a 3-4 ans sur les journalistes qui critiquaient beaucoup l'obésité et on a fait un costume qui était assez volumineux et on avait lesté avec des poids de plongée et on les a jetés dans le métro à Paris.
2 or 3 years ago, in a formation with the journalists, they came up with the idea to come up with those fat costumes, which they have thrown in the metro stations.
Avec des poids de plongée et on leur a dit maintenant il faut passer dans les tourniquets et il faut aller s'asseoir dans le métro à côté des personnes.
Well, people would wear these with weights attached to these costumes, and they asked the journalists to have to go through the metro and try to sit between people and see how hard it would be.
Au bout de 2 heures, stop. J'ai dit nous on ne retire pas le costume.
And they cannot take off that costume. That's not an option.
Et maintenant on le fait dans les facultés de médecine.
And now they do it with the doctors in the faculty of medicine.
Yeah, we do the same training in Canada with the bariatric care suite that I showed you. We do the same training. It has a really impactful, we've measured change, and it changes weight-wise significantly with healthcare professionals. Yeah, it has to be done very respectfully. It's not made to make fun or, so with good guidelines, it's very effective. Yeah, nicely done.
My name is Denise Campbell-Sher. I work at University of Alberta.
I'm sorry, would you mind standing up and saying so everybody can hear you better?
Yeah, I'm Denise Campbell-Sher. I'm a family doctor at the University of Alberta. I work with these guys. We should chat because one of the things we're trying to do is actually get a group of people together who want to change the training. So we meet monthly. It's kind of like a little club. People are doing it off the corner of their table, trying to produce courses and materials for teaching for students and residents and practicing physicians. So there's a little poster if you want to join the club. Everybody's welcome. Because I mean, the point is that right now they get 3 years in first year on obesity, on a chronic disease that affects 40% of their patients. And you know, the Maya Angelou quote, right? You can only do it like you can only do as well as you can do. If you don't know better, you can't do better, right? So first thing is to help people know better. So anyway, join the club. Yeah, it's a
Yes, please.
Yes. My name is Katia Greenko. I'm also with Novo, and my question goes to Gigi and Joe. Joe, you mentioned that when you receive some of the weight bias reports, you reply to people trying to help them. Can you maybe share some practical things that you can tell people when they've experienced that? Because before that external drop becomes internalized, are there any practical things that
So the most practical guidance we give people if they experience bias from a healthcare provider, and I mean, the practical advice is to talk to them about the complexity of the disease in order to help them understand it's complex. That's not really a realistic option when you're in a power position, a healthcare provider to a patient. So we've actually developed a resource in the US that identifies healthcare providers that are willing to see people who live with obesity and talk to them in a more respectful way. And it's not the perfect solution, right? But if you're someone who needs care and you're being stigmatized by your doctor or your healthcare provider, maybe the best option is for you to find someone else at that point, and then let us, through our education efforts through the societies and through the other organizations, be able to try to change their behaviors. It is not an easy question. I mean, 90% of those questions are about healthcare situations, and I would say 75% of the time we're telling someone, you probably need to find another healthcare provider because this is not the right person. And at least in the US, we have the freedom to move between healthcare providers in most cases.
I can't wait to give you a hug. It's been a while. Actually, just to add to what Joe said there, it is quite a difficult thing for a patient, and it's a horrible, horrible situation to be in. But one thing is key, and that is knowledge and power to the patient. A lot of patients actually don't understand that they have a disease. They don't understand that that there's so much they can learn about themselves and about their disease, and they can take that to their GP and put it on the table and say, hold on a second, this is everything I have discovered. So it's places like OAC, EASO, WLS in the UK, all these different countries that have organizations, CONs, that will give the information to the patient so they can go on and research their own disease and find out more about themselves. So they're kind of armed going to their GP, so they know how to actually have a conversation without feeling, disrespected, or, so that knowledge is powerful.
You got a quickie?
Yeah.
And then we get to you. Yes? Okay. Thank you.
The problem with this whole thing is that you can talk about patients and patients having extra kilos loaded on, but talking about stigma is not as easy. And there you have to find allies so that you're a little group, and out of the little group grow out. Because everyone is afraid of stigma. Stigma is something that's there. It's built on friction. It's built on the fact that it can spread. Everybody is a target for it. Everyone. It doesn't matter what size or something, but you have something else. But stigma as such is something that is so horrifying to people that they're not willing to take anything else. You need to learn, all of us need to learn how it functions so that we can bring it with us.
Andreas from Germany. If we look at stigma and stereotypes and disrespect, it looks like a very complex issue and a difficult issue. But I believe most of those facets go back to one thing, which is people tend to believe that it's the fault of the patient. It's their fault. And if we address that issue, if we change that, and like Arya said in the talk before, it's not their fault. It's like trying to hold your breath for 15 minutes or something else, and it's just impossible. It's not their fault. And this is even true for doctors. It's not the public, it's doctors, politicians, whoever, who believe they can change it. And it's a similar issue that we had before with alcohol abuse and other issues, where we believe it's their fault, so they can change it. They do not deserve help. They do not deserve respect because it's their fault. If we change that one issue, then we are a big step forward.
Anybody wish to comment on that? I think that point has been made several times. Thank you for reinforcing it here. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? I have a question for you, which is, some of you have had a chance to look briefly at the materials that were delivered. Do you see any role for that in your work with obesity and stigma? Do you have any comments on what you have seen so far, the printed document and the draft? Any comments would be welcome.
My name is Rite and I'm from Novo Nordisk as well. I will have a comment rather than a question. First of all, this is very valuable to have you all in this same room in the platform. From my point of perspective, obesity as a clinical disease is very important, and it actually begins in parent when you expect the birth to a baby, in your mother's when you are before you get born. So it's very important for the childhood obesity to do something. I mean, the prevention part is very important. For the children, we know that the world is getting digital and they're getting, in front of iPads, televisions, everything. So they are more living in the closed area in front of screens, black screens. For example, very recently, the Mattel CEO he came from Google. And now we know that Mattel, they are working on new toys and they have new projects like with synchronized in doing, while the children is going to play with the toys, he or she has to move and get some digital exercises as well. So in terms of preventing in the childhood obesity, when they are more child, some new ways of doing things we should keep in mind as well, rather than, of course, there should be always the conventional methods of training, data and everything, but as a whole society, we should be doing something or thinking in terms of digital, not more futuristic. That's my comment, actually.
Thank you. So think about what you can do where you are.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And if anyone is specifically interested in the pregnancy and obesity issue, the National Academy of Medicine in the US is actually in June has a webinar on pregnancy and obesity and potential of passing on genetic or epigenetic signals to your child. So it's there's upcoming education around that as well.
From Italy, I'm a physician.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Yes, sorry, my voice is not so. I try. I am a physician from Italy and I work in an obesity clinic since 20 years. I think the stigma problem, we have to work on children because the first stigma comes from pediatrician to the child and to the family with a very deep sense of guilty. My experience is that I have 4 children with the same husband, and 2 are thin and 2 are fat. And my environment is the same. And I still fighting with the pediatrician. They say you should do more, move more, eat less, and so on. But I say they are 4. We do the same things for 4. So it's not this the reason. But at the school, they have stigma, the 2 girls that are fat. And so I think the stigma really can become from when you are a child. So your self-consciousness become very low. So you go, your score at school are lesser. And so your life becomes on uphill and not downhill. I think this could be, because everything you say is very good, it's very, I appreciate it very much, and we try to apply in our work as strong as we can against orthopedicians, against, mainly orthopedicians are, in Italy, the one who give stigma to patients. But children are really, really exposed to this.
I think it's really important that you mention that because we speak an awful lot as patients about the vicious circle, and for those of you that would know what the vicious circle is, it is particularly for myself as a child, I did carry weight. I didn't eat any different to my brothers who were like your 2 children who were quite slim, quite normal, quite healthy. I exercised as much as they did. I was actually, a really fast runner in school. I came second and first, and I was quite delighted with myself, but I was still carrying weight. But because I carried weight, I was stigmatized and bullied as a child. So what did I do? I ate chocolate to console myself and feel a little bit better. But then I would feel guilty because I would look at the empty chocolate wrapper and go, oh, that's wrong, I shouldn't have done that. And then I would start to that self-talk, that like voice in my head of, you know what, now you're going to get fatter, what are you going to do now, this isn't any good. Then I'd notice more people looking at me, I'd eat more chocolate. So I'd go around in this awful circle, and then I start to isolate myself. And that vicious circle exists in an awful lot of people with obesity, unfortunately. And I think one key way is education within schools and opening a conversation at a very young age. You know, we've seen videos and stuff like that from different countries where the children are actually, you know, not stigmatizing a child that is overweight, but including them in their play and their chat and their conversation. It's about actually, you know, having that conversation with a child, the teacher having a conversation and saying, okay, just because somebody is a little bit bigger, that doesn't make them any different from the person who speaks a little slower, or the person who has orange hair like in Ireland, because they're all gingers. You know, it's about making it more normal and accepted at a very young age. And like, I mean, that starts in education, you know, and put at home as well. You give the tools to a parent, you get the parent to open the conversation, and voila, communication is a lot of it.
Il y a un sujet sur lequel on n'a pas encore évoqué. Pour la France, l'obésité n'est toujours pas reconnue comme étant une maladie.
Okay, an important topic that we haven't tackled, for instance, that in France it's not even recognized as a disease.
Et c'est 1 heure qui n'est pas obligatoire en fac de médecine, dans le cursus initial.
It's just 1 hour in the faculty of medicine when we talk about it.
Quand on réussira à prouver que l'obésité est reconnue, l'obésité comme une maladie dans tous les pays du monde entier, et que ça soit inscrit et éduqué en fac de médecine et en paramédical, là on commencera à avancer aussi.
Once it's recognized as a disease worldwide, then begins the real work.
C'est une des conditions sine qua non, en plus du travail qui doit être fait sur les patients et la population.
It's an unconditional requirement to be done on the level of patients and medical care providers.
Thank you very much, panel.